Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Access Granted. I'm your host, Grant Sashray, and I'm sorry I haven't done this podcast in a little while. I've just been really super busy. Of course, the LSU playoffs have really started to kick on, and LSU football has really started to pick up. So I'm kind of trying to have a hard time trying to juggle each and everything. But luckily I was able to try to find time to do this podcast today. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Of course, we got LSU losing 3 straight. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that to kick off the podcast. The struggles and what needs to happen moving forward. Is there any hope for LSU in the future? Stuff like that. Of course, Tulane has been really good. We're going to talk about Tulane's chances of making the college football playoff and what they've done so far this season. We're also going to discuss the Saints, and they've won. They've now won 2 straight since they fired Dennis Allen. Like, for example, that's really how long I've done this podcast. We didn't even talk about Dennis Allen getting fired. And then also, we're going to talk a little bit about the Pelicans, because the Pelicans have been awfully disappointing, man. I'm not even so much a Pelicans fan. I really haven't gotten a chance to really watch the Pelicans, of course, because football. It's still football season, so it's hard for me to go from one sport to another and fully break it down. But I was able to watch the Pelicans the other night against the Lakers. So of course, I'm a Lakers fan. Yeah, I know you're gonna make the jokes about the Yankees and the Lakers and blah blah blah. But I've been a Lakers fan for the last. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit of a bandwagon for the Lakers. The Yankees have been a fan of since I was 4 years old. That's because my mom's family is originally from the New York area, so I've been a fan since then. But we're going to also talk about the Pelicans, what I've seen and listened and heard just about the Pelicans and what their struggles are. I'm going to break all that down. But first, let's discuss the LSU Fighting Tigers and their struggles. So LSU's lost 3 straight. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that their loss against A&M was just horrific. Of course, they were leading in the first half, and then A&M outscored LSU. I believe it was like 28-7 the second half. It was it was a completely different half in the second half when the LSU A&M game. Then you go against Alabama. That was I wouldn't say that's a rebound game, but that was an Alabama team that was very vulnerable. You caught Alabama at the right time, because of given what they're how they've been struggling, their issues on the defensive side. So it was a great opportunity for LSU to turn the season around against your longtime rival in Alabama, a team that you're pretty even with. Let's be honest, Alabama on paper is not that much better than LSU. All right, they're about even. But LSU ended up losing 42-13. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. I mean, of course, Alabama still has a lot of talent, a lot of 5 stars on their team. So the talent differential was there for LSU, of course. But I mean, that's on paper. However, as a team, they're both very similar. Alabama had a new head coach, new staff. It's not the same exact team from the year before, as some players transferred out, but still some players they're going through a transition period. They struggle on defense. I mean, they allowed 35 points against Vanderbilt, and they had some issues in the second half of games. But then LSU gets this final score is 42-13. I mean, LSU had a chance to to get back in the game. They were down 21-9 at the beginning of the second half. LSU's driving down the field to get in the goal line, and they throw a pick. Garrett Nussmeier throws a pick in the end zone, and after that, it was just Alabama all over the place. I mean, Jalen Monroe had I believe he had over 180 yards and 180 yards and 4 touchdowns, 3 or 4 touchdowns. I mean, he was unstoppable. I mean, he had a 72-yard touchdown, and that was it was over before the 72-yard touchdown that put Alabama up 35-9. But I mean, when 35-6. But it was over before that. But that was kind of like the nail in the coffin. That was already 6 feet under the ground. Like it was just a bad game. And then of course the Florida game, which you lose against a Florida team that is struggling. This Florida team had to win 2 of the last 3 games to make it to a bowl game. This game was LSU, and I believe they had to play somebody else that was really good that they had no shot of winning. Of course, they had to play Florida State, and that was a guarantee they're going to beat Florida State because Florida State has been awful all year long. They've only won 1 game, but Florida had to win 2 of the last 3, and it was a tough 2 out of 3 for Florida, but they were able to handily beat out LSU. I know the score is 27-16. I know LSU, it was a close game throughout most of the game, but Florida looked like the better team all throughout the game. They were more physical up front. They sacked Garrett Nussmeier 7 times. Some of it was on the offensive line. Some of it was on Nussmeier. There were some plays where you saw – I saw this on Twitter. Like, they were doing screenshots of, like, certain times where Nussmeier got sacked. And, right before he gets sacked, and there would be, like, a receiver or 2 open. Even if it was for 2 or 3 yards, the guy was open, right? So that's still yards. Whether you get 2 or 3 yards, and sometimes the 2 or 3 yard catches can turn into 5, 6, 7, and even a first down catch. So, the fact that, he's not really going through his progression, he's worried about getting sacked. And now, some of it is because he's worried about getting sacked because he's been getting clobbered all game. But a lot of those issues that Nussmeier has is on Nussmeier. It's not even just on Nussmeier. It's a combination of this. It's the offensive line. Of course, it's on Gary Nussmeier for some of the plays. But then also the offensive play calling all year long has been suspect. It really has. And, he's in the last game against Florida, Brian Kelly took over the play call. Like, anytime a head coach, there's head coaches that call plays. So, Steve Sarkisian calls plays. Lane Kiffin calls all the plays. There's coaches in the college football that call those plays. Matter of fact, in the NFL, they call plays. It's not foreign that a head coach calls plays, especially if he has a lot of coordinating experience. However, Brian Kelly has been at LSU. Even Brian Kelly's called plays as a head coach. When he's at Cincinnati and Central Michigan, even I think early on in his time at Notre Dame, he did call plays. But if you look at, the fact that Brian Kelly is interjecting play calling now, when in the past, since his time at LSU, he's really kind of let his own coordinators do their own thing. It's really, that's really concerning. But I'll say this: there was some bright spots in that. Of course, the run game really came alive. If you look at the LSU's rushing stats, Caden Durham led the way with 91 yards, and he had 20 carries for 91 yards. Josh Williams had a great game running the ball, 13 carries for 69 yards. But however, Gary Nussmeier, and the thing is, they actually rushed the net total was 183 yards, but if you don't take away the Gary Nussmeier sacks, they had 130 yards of rushing. But I think that's kind of an outlier because Gary Nussmeier had over 100. Because Gary Nussmeier got sacked 7 times, he had a negative 53 yards. So LSU ran the ball fairly well. So I think that's kind of the influence of Brian Kelly, interjecting into the play calling. But that is concerning still because again, he never called plays at LSU before as a head coach. He's called plays in the past, but not at LSU. He's let his coordinators do their own thing. And so I'm wondering, what that's going to look like in the future. What's going to happen with the offensive staff at the end of the year? Would they make changes? Probably safe to say so, but I'm not going to confirm that, nor I'm just guessing, because that's been unusual since the time LSU. That Brock was there for the first 6-7 games. Brian Kelly never really injected in the offense, but you can see why he's interjecting the offense. If you look at the stats, if you look at the last, say, 5-6 games, so 1, 2, 3. So in their last 3 games, the most they've scored is 23 points, and that was in the game against A&M. But if you take away those points, if you take away the first half of that Texas A&M game, they have not scored 20 points in a game. If you want to do the app, so in the last 3 games, not including the first half against A&M, LSU has only scored 35 points in 10 quarters. That is 3.5 points per quarter. That's not even a full touchdown. They're really struggling on offense, and it's a culmination of things. For one, they can't run the ball. I mean, now they're able to run the ball effectively against Florida, which I said I think that some of that has to do with Brian Kelly interjecting himself into the offensive play calling. But against A&M and Alabama, they cannot run the ball. And really, what's even more concerning is that LSU, in their last 5 games, has only scored. The most they scored is 34. Their other games, they scored. The most they scored, other than that, was 29 points against Ole Miss. But even in the Ole Miss game, I mean, it took overtime to get the total. You know what I'm saying? Like, the offense is not looking good. It's not the defense. I mean, the defense has had their issues, of course, against Alabama. They had their issues. And A&M, they had their issues in the second half when they injected the quarterback change. But LSU, up until like the last, I'm trying to look at this, until the last 27 seconds of regulation in Ole Miss, they had only scored 16 points. So if you take away the touchdown, that happened in the last 27 seconds in that game, and then you also take away the touchdown in the overtime game, LSU has averaged, give me one second. I mean, LSU, this is not good. Let me do the math real quick. 2016. LSU's only averaged 20.4 points per game in regulation. That's not very good. I mean, it's not good at all. I mean, that is a bad offense. That is a bad offense. I mean, you can't. I mean, I know Gary Nussbauer's throwing up yards, but some of those yards are empty yardage yards. I mean, they're empty yards. I mean, some of those yards came in when you're down by 2 touchdowns. It's just not an efficient offense, and that's why. I mean, it's hard for me to blame the defense for some of the issues, especially in the Alabama game when you make a few stops, but then offense can't score. And then even in the Florida game, the defense actually was probably the best game in a little while, but yet the offense cannot score points. And matter of fact, I just want to put this in perspective. So LSU, like I said, LSU's averaged 20.4 points in regulation. That will be tied with Michigan and Wyoming. If you did let's say they played the last 10 games. Let's say they averaged 20.4 points in the last 10 games. You are tied with Michigan and Wyoming, and they are 118th in total scoring. Matter of fact, you would be below UL Monroe. This offense has been horrific. It's been horrific. So, in the meantime, as you're regressing in the season, now I'll say this before we get to the regressing part. There is still hope for LSU, right? You expect them to win the next 2 games. They're at home. Yeah, Vandy and Oklahoma are no slouches. Vandy, I believe, is 6-4 right now, and this is the best Vandy team they had in a little while. Considering the fact that they beat Alabama and they've had some They played Texas tough. They've had some good moments throughout the year. And if I'm LSU, I'm scared. This is probably the first time that a lot of LSU fans are scared of Vandy. That's how bad they've been playing. And Vandy has a running quarterback, which LSU's had some troubles with the last few games. But there is some hope, right? You can win your next 2 games. I mean, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma are struggling. Even Oklahoma, who's struggling, that's not a winnable game. But it's favorable in LSU's favor, considering Oklahoma struggles as well. So you can finish the season 8-4, and you're not gonna get the best bowl games. You might play in the Liberty Bowl, you might play in the Gator Bowl, or it's one of those bowl games, and finish on a strong note. Finish the season 8-4, win your bowl game. You finish 9-4. If a 9-win season, you figure out what you need to do in the offseason. Do you need to make some changes? In the office, do you need to go? How much you need to go in the transfer portal? How much money you got in the that you need to spend in the transfer portal to make a team, and then also maintaining that recruiting class, right? Signing day is only less than a month away, and you want to maintain that the class of 2025. Right now, of course, the class of 2025, it is. It's loaded, right? You got Bryce Underwood, who is the number 1 recruit in the country, let alone the number 1 quarterback in the country. Harlan Berry is a running back. I mean, DJ Locke is DJ. What's it? Locke? I'm tripping, guys. It's Tuesday. But anyway. LSU has a great shot of. Right now, so according to On3, LSU is 4th in the recruiting rankings. They're only below Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. But LSU right now has 5 stars committed to them. That's Bryce Underwood, DJ Pickett, and Harlan Berry, right? And let me share this with you guys real quick. So that's just what we're looking at right now. So Bryce Underwood, of course, he's a 5-star. TJ Pickett's a 5-star, and Harlan Berry is a 5-star. Those are consistent 5-star guys, right? Then Cade Phillips is he's a 4-star everywhere else, but On3 considers him a 5-star. So really, LSU has 4 5-stars committed that are committed to the play for them, right? Now things could change, right? We still got early signing day. Things could change. I know Miami's going after DJ Pickett really hard. He's from South Florida. No shocker there. Bryce Underwood, I know Michigan's been trying to pay him, but he's not budging because Michigan is a graveyard for quarterbacks right now. Considering the fact, and he was never really a great place for quarterbacks regardless. JJ McCarthy was he's a good quarterback, but Michigan was really not a place known for quarterbacks, even though they had Jim Harbaugh. And really, they kind of went away with that. It was like, all right, we're just going to hand the ball off 40, 50 times a game. And that's how we're going to win games, which was very successful. They went to 3 straight playoff appearances, and they won a natty last year. But then, you want to keep these guys, the guys you have right now. I know Derek Meadows has been, he's been Notre Dame is beginning there, trying to get him to flip. Obviously, you saw Devin Harper, one of the top offensive linemen in the country. He flipped from LSU to Ole Miss, and that was an in-state guy, so that was a pretty big deal. Now there was rumors that he was going to flip. I knew he was going to flip just from what I've heard, But, you want to maintain this recruiting class, right? Jacob Bradford, I also want to mention Jacob Bradford is his younger brother is Blaine Bradford, who is the number 1 safety for next year. So but Jacob's really good too. By the way, he's a sleeper for sure. But anyway, you want to maintain this class, right? And you still have a chance to flip to Corey Moore, although that's unlikely. But your main thing is making sure you maintain this class. This class is what's going to help the future, right? Because the class of 20 is important to maintain the class of 2025. The class of 2026 is loaded in the state of Louisiana right now. That is anytime there's a certain period of time where Louisiana is just full of talent, that's usually around the time LSU wins. That's when you start to see the more successful periods of LSU football. Remember, like, for example, 2003 national championship. A lot of those guys, that was a bump in the recruiting in Louisiana. 2007, same thing. 2011, same thing. Now, even though they didn't win the national championship, that was part of a period where they had a huge bump for 2011 through 2013. Then the 2019 national championship, that was helped out a lot by the class of 2016 and 2017. I mean, 2017, I believe, had Justin Jefferson, Grant Delpit, Caleb Chason. I mean, so when you start to see those classes pop up and they're like big time, that's usually when you see LSU really start to, look like one of the league teams in the country. So when we pull this up for the class of 2026, Lamar Brown, obviously Shaquem Stewart was the number one recruit in the country in the class of 2026, but now he's in the class of 2025. So that's another example. Like, right? You also want to keep Jakeem Stewart in the state. So, because that would, then you would have five stars committed to your class. Right? So the class 2026, you got Lamar Brown, 5-star guy as an offensive lineman. You got Blaine Bradford, who I think will be a 5-star by the time of next year. Right now, he's favored to commit to LSU. You already got Aiden Hallside, top 50 recruit. Richard Anderson, top 50 recruit. You got him committed. Bryson Martinez, who's right outside, who goes to East Ascension, which is right outside Baton Rouge in Gonzales, Louisiana. He's favored to commit to LSU. Jabari Mack, high priority for LSU. He's he's favored to commit to LSU. And then Dylan Berryman is rising. Darius McKinley is rising. His older brother is, of course, Dominic McKinley. Shakai Anderson, 4-star guy, top 300 recruit. Darius McKinley, top 300 recruit. Dylan Berryman, top 300 recruit. Kenny Darby, who just committed to LSU. He got a huge bump in the rankings, not only because of how many colleges are going after him, but also he got the offer from LSU a few days before he committed, which is right before the Alabama game. So you have a large class of guys. This 2026. Oh, Jalen Chapman, another LSU guy, committed to LSU. So you have a huge class of talented guys. I mean, you got 6 guys committed in the top 100 nationally, and then you also have, I would say, 10 guys committed in the top 200. Kenny Darby is going to rise, I think. He's a really good player out of Airline High School in Bossier City. So you could have 10 guys from the top 300 committed from the state of Louisiana alone. That's also not including the guys who are out of state. So you have a great shot of having another top 5 class for the 2026 recruiting cycle. So there is still hope for LSU. But anyway, enough with LSU. Let's talk about the Tulane Green Wave. So Tulane, they're 9-2. Tulane right now has officially advanced to the American Athletic Conference Championship. Tulane just defeated Navy 35-0. Navy was a very good team. So defeating Navy ensured them that they were going to go to the conference championship. They broke the tiebreaker. So Tulane finished. So Tulane right now is undefeated in conference play. Tulane, they're 92 and 7-0 in conference play. Since they started the season 1-2, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that they played Kansas State in Oklahoma at the beginning of the season. Kansas State, really, they probably should have won. They got robbed at the end of a controversial call, a controversial offensive pass interference call. But since their 1-2 start, they've won 8 straight and have a chance to have their 3rd straight season of 10+ wins. Look, if you know anything about Tulane football, it really has never been that good. So I can only imagine that this would probably be the first time that Tulane has won 10+ games in the regular season 3 straight years in a row. And that's all started, of course, with Willie Fritz, and John Summerall in his first year has continued the success at Tulane. So Tulane, they have a shot to go to the college football playoff. They really do. Now they need some help, but they need to control their own destiny and they also need some help as well. Now they have to defeat Memphis on Thanksgiving night. That will be a huge game here in New Orleans, so I'll be very interested to see who shows up for that game. I could assume that there's going to be a decent crowd there. I mean, it's Thanksgiving night, unfortunately, because if it was a Saturday, there'll be a great crowd there. But I'm not sure how it's going to be a Thursday Thanksgiving night, but it's going to be a decent crowd. Say 20,000, 25,000. And they, of course, have to win the conference championship. Army finished the regular season undefeated. Now they have to get past Notre Dame. But if Army can get past Notre Dame, this could be the American Conference Championship. Could be for a playoff spot. Army would need to not only defeat Notre Dame, but they need to defeat Notre Dame, and they also have to beat Texas San Antonio. So Army, so that could be interesting. Well, they don't need to be Notre Dame. They just need to beat Texas San Antonio, and then of course win their conference championship. Which will be against Tulane, ultimately. But if you look at the rankings right now, let's look at the college football rankings. Let me share this with you guys. So right now, Boise State is 12th, right? So they will get the last spot in because if you're the best group of 5 team, you're going to get that 12th spot automatically. And so you would need Boise State to lose the next 2 games. And, of course, Tulane would have to win out. Because Tulane, if they beat Army, if they win against Memphis and they beat Army in the American Athletic Conference Championship, they will get in. But, they will most likely be in. However, you need Boise State to lose some more games. So Boise State, on the other hand, they have 2 games. One against Wyoming. Like I said earlier, their offense is horrific. They're 9-8, so they're going to be. So Boise State should win that game. But then they have a game against Oregon State, and Oregon State right now another 4-6. But they could lose against Oregon State. They could. They really could. But it's not looking great. For Tulane's chances. I mean, they would, of course, have to win out, which Tulane can. Not saying they can't. But then they would but then they have to rely on Boise State losing. And Boise State's next 2 games, Boise State would be favored. And then in the conference championship, I believe they will play Colorado State. Colorado State is undefeated right now in conference play. And I mean, it's not looking good for Tulane. I mean, they really have to. Like I said, Tulane needs to get help. If Tulane can win their next 2 games, they can win out, and then Boise State lose another game, they're in. I think they have a great shot of making it. It's gonna be. It's not like a 60-70% chance. It's probably like 50-50. It's like just under 50. They still have a great chance to make it, but they're still going to need help. But Tulane overall, regardless of what happens near the end, Tulane's had a great season. It's their 3rd straight 10-plus win season. You have a great team. I think you saw a lot of players coming back. You got a coach, John Summerall could easily get a head coaching job, right? I know, like right now, most of the jobs open right now are group of 5 schools, but if there's a Power 5 school, there's a Power 5 job that opens up, he's going to be one of the top candidates for each and every single one of those jobs that open, those openings that open up. So, but if you're able to maintain this team, that a good bit of the team next year, bringing some key guys out the transfer portal, and also John Summerall coming back next year, Tulane will have an awesome shot at making the college football playoff. Anyway, in court, I think if we used the gold jersey against Bama, we would have won. How about let's not have Omar the Tiger being brought out in a cage? By the way, I did not break that down. All right, sure. We're gonna break that. I know we're talking about Tulane, but I want to talk about this Omar the Tiger stuff. Why are we bringing out a Tiger that's not Mike the Tiger on the field? Why do we have to use our tax money through a dark political group to get a Tiger that's not even Mike the Tiger on the field? It's a waste of time. And LSU, by the way, has lost, ever since they got blown out by Alabama 42-13, and then they lose against Florida for the first time since 2018. Like, I went to LSU from 2020 through 2023, and we never lost against Florida. There's not many people that graduate from LSU that can say that. I mean, there really isn't. So, it was a bad loss, and so, what? I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand the Omar the Tiger stuff, but it was so funny though. They're like, let's bring him on the field. Let's shine a light through the cage. It's this obese tiger, like Omar. So the tiger's named Omar Bradley. Like the tiger was literally named Omar Bradley. Let me show you this tiger. And Mike Scarborough actually tweeted this out. Who does a lot of great content for Tiger Bait. Let me show you this photo pulling up on this Twitter, but it was super funny. Bro, that is a fat tiger. I've seen tigers before, and I know they're a little chubby, but that is an obese tiger. And they're shining a light on him. Like, I don't think he liked this at all. You can see him roaring. Like, bro, it was a waste of time. Like, and they try to name it as Mike the Tiger. So, I don't get it. I don't get it. But anyway, Tulane has a great shot of making the college football playoff. Now let's move on to the Saints and the Pelicans and how they're moving in two separate ways. I mean, so the Saints, of course, I didn't really get to break this down on the podcast because I've done this podcast in 2 weeks, just with everything that's been going on the last 2 weeks of my life. But, of course, the Saints fired Dennis Allen. It needed to be done. You lost against a bad Panthers team, a horrifically bad Panthers team. The team gave that, at that point, they given up on the season. They given up on Dennis Allen. It needed to be done. And really, it wasn't even Mickey Loomis's decision. It was Gail Benson's decision. And every time you hear Mickey Loomis talk about him having to fire Dennis Allen, he sounds petty. He didn't want to make the move. It's like, I think he's a great guy, and blah blah blah. But like, I don't think it needed to be done. It needed to be done. He lost against the worst team in the league. But then they fire him. They named Darren Rizzi as the head coach. And since Coach Riz has taken over, the Saints are 2-0. They're playing with a lot more energy. So when I see that, I mean, clearly the head coach was the problem. Now, the team still has some issues. You've seen they make trades. Still need to make some changes in the front office, in my opinion. But they're winning. Now, I don't want them to keep winning because obviously I want to have the highest draft pick possible because the Saints are in rebuild mode, which is something they should have been doing the last 2 years, rebuilding this team and not paying 35-year-old players, in which I think DeMar Davis is a great player. He's still playing at a high level, but you're overpaying for Derek Carr, who's an average quarterback. You paid him $150 million to come play for you. He's not worth $150 million. But the Saints are winning. Taysom Hill went off because right now he's probably the only, but outside of Alvin Kamara is the only viable option because everyone's hurt. And the Saints, have looked great. They beat the Falcons team that was they're currently leading the division right now, and a lot of people didn't think they were going to beat the Falcons. But it's the Falcons. The Falcons are going to Falcon, and they found a way, and the Saints found a way to win. But in this last game against the Browns, a game where Jameis Winston was Jameis Winston's homecoming game, a game where Jameis Winston nearly threw for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. The Saints ran the ball for over 214 yards. Taysom Hill led the way with 138 yards and 3 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara had a pretty good day, rushing for 67 yards and 16 carries. Taysom Hill also Taysom Hill had 8 catches for 50 yards too. So I mean, he had a great day overall. Derek Carr 21 for 27, 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Saints offense looked great. I mean, although the defense didn't look great as well. I mean, of course, you nearly let up 400 yards of passing. But overall, the Saints are playing with a lot more energy. You can see it. You could see it. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they need to make a head coaching change. And really, the Saints' schedule for the rest of the year is favorable. I mean, Tampa Bay is struggling. Las Vegas is not very good. LA's been out. The Los Angeles Rams have been struggling. New York's awful. Washington, I don't think they're going to win that game. But Green Bay, I don't think they're going to win that game either. But, I mean, the Saints have a chance to win 4 of their next 6 games. Do I want them to? No, because I want the highest. As a Saints fan, you would want the highest draft pick possible, but it is the Saints. They're going to find a way to go 8-9 or 7-10 and get the 12th or the 13th seed. Really, you need a 5th pick. You need a really good draft pick. Like seriously, you need to do a full rebuild. But at least the Saints aren't giving up on the season. I guess that's a positive because they easily could tank. But again, but I'm not sure if I showed. I don't think I showed you Mike the Tiger, the Omar the Tiger. So I'm gonna show you this again because I don't think I shared it really too well. But that's Omar the Tiger, and really he's going to be on the thumbnail because I think he has a lot. I think he's a lot to blame for LSU losing through sure. Now they did lose because A&M, which is before the Omar game. But if LSU loses the next 2 games, let's blame Omar. Let's do it. This fake Mike the Tiger, fake Mike, obese Mike. I don't know how many nicknames you call him. I saw a lot of nicknames for Omar. This is why you don't let a UL grad make decisions for LSU. Talk about our governor, Jeff Landry, who's a UL alum. So I think it's all part of the plan. This is all part of the Raging Reviews plan to ruin LSU. But anyway, speaking of UL, they're also 9-1 too, so they're playing some really good football as well. But anyway, but let's talk a little bit about the Pelicans before we wrap this thing up. The Pelicans are bad. No, like they're really bad. They're 4-10. They're bad, right? The Pelicans, if you look at the standings right now, they are 4-10, and they're just above the Utah Jazz, who are the worst team in the Western Conference. And pull this. And if you look at this, go down the list, and that's right there. New Orleans Pelicans are 4-10, right above the Utah Jazz. This is not where the Pelicans should be. Matter of fact, the Pelicans should be in this area right here, right? The Western Conference is really tough. So, with the roster they have, they should be 4, 5, 6, or 3rd, or whatever, right? If you look at the Pelicans roster, this is some of their salaries. DeJounte Murray's getting paid $29 million a year. CJ McCollum's getting paid $33 million a year. Zion Williamson getting paid $36 million a year. Herb Jones, $12 million a year. Brandon Ingram, $36 million a year. This is actually a very expensive roster. And really, this is the most not only the most talented roster the Pelicans have had, but also the deepest. Brandon Boston has been playing awesome for the Pelicans so far, averaging 12.3 points a game, 4.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. He's been one of the better role players on the team. He's been awesome. He actually wasn't on the roster before the season even started. But he's been a key role player for this. Well, he's starting for them now because of injuries. Or actually, he is starting. Period. Just not because of injuries. He's just starting. Period. Or it could be because of injuries. The Pelicans have dealt with a lot of injuries, but this team is a lot better on paper. I know they're dealing with some injuries. Of course, Zion is still dealing with his stuff, but still with his injuries. But this team is underperforming. They should not be this bad. Matter of fact, let me break down some numbers. So I was on Marlon Favorite show yesterday, and we had then he brought on David Grubb, and David Grubb, who does a lot of great stuff covering both the Saints and the Pelicans. He mentioned this, that in the last 8 games, the Pelicans are second to last net rating, which separates offense and defense. Second to last in field goal percentage. And then in the second half of games, which the Pelicans are notoriously bad in the second half of games, they have a net rating of negative 27.4. That is last in the league. The second worst team, which is the Washington Wizards, who, by the way, are also worse than the Pelicans in net rating and field goal percentage overall and throughout the season. But in the last 8 games, the Wizards have a net rating of negative 17.2. That's 10. They're 10.2 points better than the Pelicans. That's how bad the Pelicans have been playing. And when you have Brandon Ingram, Zion Williams, you got C.J. McCollum, Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones. I mean, you got all these guys playing for you, and you're not producing. You're not producing wins. You're 4-10. You're second to last in the Western Conference. That's on the Trey Murphy, Vez Messi, DeJounte Murray. I mean, this is on paper, this should be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. And like I said earlier in the show, I'm a Lakers fan, so I was able to watch the Pelicans and the Lakers play. Right, I want to see how the Lakers are doing because obviously they're my team, but also the Pelicans, how they're doing, because I'm in New Orleans and I'm covering the New Orleans for y'all. And I hope the Pelicans do good because it helps the city I grew up in. And the clear issue is simply coaching. The Pelicans with the roster, with Willie Green, they're 4-10, the second to last in the Western Conference. Look at the Lakers. In my opinion, the Pelicans have a better roster than the Lakers. The Pelicans are deeper than the Lakers. Yeah, the Lakers have AD and LeBron James. And they have some, like Delta Connect is a really good player. Austin Reeves has been awesome for this year, averaging 18 points a game for the Lakers. They have some good role players, but the Pelicans are so much better than the Lakers. And right now, the Lakers are 9-4. The Lakers are 9-4, and look like a much better team than the last year's team. And this is a very similar team they had to the team they had last year. Why are the Lakers improving? Because they hired a new coach. JJ Redick was a wild card. That was a wild card. And they managed. And it was a wild card. I mean, it really was a wild card. You hired a guy who's never had any prior coach experience other than coaching middle school basketball. I'll say this. JJ Redick was one of the more intelligent players in the NBA. Shoot, I mean, he had a podcast. That was one of the better NBA podcasts out there. And he really broke down the game. He's a really smart basketball player. Matter of fact, the reason why LeBron James and JJ Redick had the podcast anyway was because that was basically a head coaching interview. because I think LeBron James wanted, see hear JJ Redick and his philosophies on basketball. And the Lakers are now 9-4. I mean, I'm looking at the Lakers. They're running plays that they did not run last year. They're running creative plays. They're winning. The Lakers are 9-4. The Lakers are usually a 42-40 team. This year, they actually might win 50 plus games. The Pelicans, on the other hand, the Pelicans have a much better roster than them. And if you look at, I want to show you this. So, because I should have said this earlier, but look at where the Pelicans are at. They're 4-10. They have a deep team, a talented team that has the ability to be a top 5 team in the Western Conference. They're just above the Utah Jazz, who are in last place. Just below the Blazers, below the Spurs, and I know the Mavs are struggling, but I'm not going to count the Mavs. All 4 of these, besides the Pelicans, the 4 teams I just mentioned right now, the Jazz, the Trailblazers, and the Spurs, are all rebuilding. The Clippers, who were 9th at 8-7, they're rebuilding. You're in the same conversation as teams that are rebuilding. This Pelicans team, when healthy, is a 50-plus win team. However, they are not playing like it. Simple as that. This is a team last year that went 49-33. Matter of fact, the year before they went 42-40, but this is a team that was on pace to have a breakout year. And it has not worked out. Will they make a coaching change? Probably so. And Gail Betson may need to fire her second coach of the year, which I don't think, and really, if you know anything about the Saints and the Pelicans organization, but really the Saints in general, the Saints fired a coach mid-season. They don't fire coaches mid-season. They usually wait till after the season. That's how they've always operated. Pelicans, I'm not sure if they've ever fired a coach mid-season. I think even then they still waited till after the year was over. But it's just a mess right now at the Pelicans, and they need to make changes. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do for the rest of the season. Actually, I thought Stan Van Gundy was fired in the season. No, he's fired after the season. So they usually fire coaches to get Benson. Since the Benson families owned the Saints, and then but then also the Pels more recently. They started owning the Pels around 2012, 2013. But in their 40 plus years of owning sports teams, they don't fire coaches mid-season. They wait till after the season. So do we see another mid-season firing with Willie Green? I have no idea. But time will tell. Anyway, this is Grant Sastray of Ruger Sports Media. I'm your host of Access Granted. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're on Twitter, make sure to follow Ruger Sports Media on Twitter. And you guys have a good rest of your night. We'll have the podcast once again on Thursday, so make sure you tune in then. We're going to have a talk LSU. We're going to talk a little bit more about Tulane and during their bye week, and to also talk about the Saints and the Pels and whatever else is going on in Louisiana. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.